The purpose of my live today was to talk to you guys a little bit about nutrition, talk about diet, talk about what's going on in Howie's life, and a little bit about why he's doing so well like he is. And for most of you guys know our story. For some of you guys that are new here, you may not. So we just want to fill you in because I think it gives you a little bit of insight as to why I'm so passionate about Howie's health and doing the things that I do for him, and not only trying to educate other pet parents out there. So many of you on our page know that we had a bulldog before Howie, and that was our Tyson, hence the name Mayor Tyson. He was actually, we live in a city in Michigan where they have a big festival, and he was actually nominated to be the mayor for this festival they have every year in our area, which is Bulldog County or Bulldog Country, I guess you could call it. And so he was nominated to be the mayor for this big festival. He was in the festival. That's how he got the name Mayor Tyson, and we just ran with it, and that's been his name, and everybody knows him by Mayor Tyson. So if you ever wondered why and where Mayor Tyson came from in relation to Howie, that's because of our first bulldog. So we got Tyson, and the whole reason of this is because, and the reason that we started on social media to begin with and got an Instagram page and talk about things the way we do is because Tyson was sick. He started having issues when he was around 6 months old. He started getting cysts in his paws, and I did what every pet parent does. I took him to the vet, and the vet started prescribing medications and things, and you know, I didn't know any better. I'm just like everybody else. You know, I took him to the vet when I thought something was wrong, and I said, you know, take care of him, do what you got to do. And it kind of became a vicious cycle. So kind of like to fast forward things a little bit. By the time, let me just give you some insight. By the time he was Howie's age, and he was a purebred bulldog too. I got him from a breeder here in Michigan. By the time he was 3 years old, I will tell you, I spent $5,258 in his medical care. By the time he was 3 years old, he had 9 vaccines and he had 22 medications. And the reason I say that is because when you hear me talk all the time about Howie has never had one medication at all. Ever, for nothing, never. He's never been on an antibiotic. He's never had to be on anything because he's healthy. So lo and behold, you know, with Tyson, I just thought, I took him into the vet. I didn't think, well, fast forward to by the time he was 6 and he started having these issues, and he started getting these spots on his face, and then he started getting these spots on his back, and it like spread like wildfire. I didn't know what it was. He had a bulldog vet. Every time the vet said, you know, I would take him in, and I come to find out that was taking him in literally every 2 weeks to the vet. And every time I took him in, they prescribed something for him. Either they prescribed an antibiotic, which he became resistant to all of them. They prescribed steroids, which he started on steroids basically when he was 6 months old. 6 months old for a cyst in his paw. They started prescribing him prednisone, and it was on and off between 5 and 20 milligrams. So again, fast forward now to 6 years old, he started having these issues. Come to find out, you know, I started researching things, and he had calcinosis cutis, which is basically poisoning from overuse of steroids. And it just kind of motivated me as a pet parent to do whatever I could to say, this is not right. Dogs shouldn't be like this. I went to a special, I mean, my vet was a bulldog specialist. Everybody in the state of Michigan knew him, and everybody took their bulldogs to him. He's still in practice now. And people still go to him even though they know our story. But I mean, that's another case, to each his own, I guess. But so what it prompted me to do was keep track of things. And you hear me talk about how I keep track of things for Howie. So I did a spreadsheet. This is what I share with you guys. It kind of made me realize what I put in my dog's body, why he was the way he was. It's mind-blowing to think that by the time this dog was 6 years old and all these things came to a head, and, you know, tell me, all you guys that have 6-year-old bulldogs out there, you know, he had, and I made a mistake. I was saying before that he had like 96 or 97 vaccines. By the time it was all said and done, he had 121 medications in him. Between all the antibiotics, the cephalexin, the different versions of them because he became resistant, the ketoconazole for fungus, the atopicas, the Apoquil, the skin scrapes, they tried allergy serums, everything for a little paw on his cyst. So needless to say, by age 6, $25,000 in, 122 or 121, I wrote it down, 121 medications, 17 vaccines. pretty much the dog was slowly tortured by his vet, if you want to put it in plain sight. He was slowly tortured by his vet. It wasn't until I got the realization to switch him to something I had never done before, which was a raw diet, did I start seeing improvements in his life. So I got an extra 18 months out of him. I did everything I could naturally. I used charcoal. You guys hear me talk about charcoal. And different things. But my biggest thing that I did is I switched his diet to a raw diet. And he lived another 18 months, and and then he started having problems breathing, and we took him in, and come to find out he had a tumor on his heart and he had a tumor in his throat. Basically that was impairing his breathing, and I couldn't put him through anymore. That dog has been through so much. If any of you guys looked at our post and seen things, it takes a strong pet parent to go through what I did and do what I did, but I think it just motivated me more to do what I do and talk about what I do. And I share this with you guys. So I talk about the medical records. I talk about the blood test I did with him. He was always on kibbles his whole life. So between the kibbles, between the vaccines, between the medications, that's where I just found out that that was not a good way of life. So when I got Howie, I vowed to do things totally different. And I did, what I thought I was doing was the right thing. And you guys heard me talk about it. I fed pre-made raw. I did a lot of my DIY myself. I also did, what else did we do? We did supplements. We did a lot of supplements because I thought that's what you were supposed to do in order to, help anything, or maybe supplement where he wasn't getting things nutritionally. And a point caught to me when he was about a year old, and I said, something has to give. There's not a reason why a dog that's 1 year old needs all these things to be healthy. And it wasn't until then that I had a couple friends, Honey the Bulldog and Samson and Delilah, friends of mine from Texas, that were feeding this new way of feeding called rotational mono feeding. And they told me about it. So I said, listen, I'll get the book. I'll read up on it. I'll research. I'll watch you guys. You guys go ahead and do it. And I'll just watch you guys for a little bit. And I did that for 2 months. I watched him while I still fed pre-made raw. I was about 10 months when I started researching and doing things. And I watched him. And I could not believe, because Honey at the time was, six, something like, no, she's 7 now? So she was like 4 or 5 by that time. And I just seen dramatic improvements in just how she started doing. The same thing with Samson and Delilah, how well they were doing. So I jumped on board when Howie was a year old. And you guys hear me talk about it all the time. And that's what I want to talk about today, because it has made a miraculous change in his life. And the reason I say that is because I'm using Tyson as a comparison to Howie. Because Tyson at 3 years old, which Howie's 3 years old. So again, remember, how many medications, how many pokes did he have in him? How much money did I spend by that time? And I knew there had to be a better way. And my goal is always to be that pet parent that helps try to educate you guys about what's going on out there and what you can do better for your pets, regardless of, what it takes. So, and that's why we're kind of here to talk about this, because we don't want it to seem overwhelming. We want to inform you guys as to what it's really all about. You don't hear very many people talk about this at all. And there's a reason why, because I was that pet parent that on Tyson spent over $25,000, because if you think about it, it's all money making. And I did that because the vet told me to do it, and I didn't think about it. And honest to God, when you guys go to the vet, think about how much time you spend at the vet. Think about how much money you spend on medications. Think about what you spend on trying different things that they tell you, only to come back and have the issues to keep happening again. So that's why I knew there had to be a better way. There had to be a way to get off of that rat race. And raw diet was the only thing that I never tried with Tyson his whole life. And when I switched him, I noticed within a couple months, he had a dramatic improvement. So I knew I had to do better with Howie. So Howie, like I said, I started him on rotational mono feeding at a year old, and he's 3 years old now. 2 years, I have not used one supplement. I have not used any oils. I have not used any dairies. And you see exactly what we feed. I tell you guys good, bad, and anything in between, and I share it with you guys. I don't want it to feel like it's overwhelming, because even for me, when I started, anytime that we try something new, it always feels like it's a little bit overwhelming. But this is where we have to come into it and say, listen, everything is overwhelming in life. Anytime you make a change in life, things are overwhelming. But am I going to tackle it, and am I going to move forward because I want my dog to live forever? Or am I just going to put myself at the mercy of my vet and be like I originally was with Tyson and say, whatever you say, whatever he needs? But tell me, vet, why do these things keep happening? You have bulldogs, you're a bulldog vet. Why do these things keep happening? Why does he get cyst in his paws all the time? Oh, it's a bulldog thing, get used to it. Just face the fact that he's going to have to be on a medication for the rest of his life. I couldn't accept that. I don't want to be on a medication for the rest of my life, and I sure as hell don't want my dog to be on a medication for the rest of his life. So that was why I got the rotational mono feeding book. And this is what I tell everybody. I'm not telling you that my way is the best way. I'm not telling you this is the only way. I'm telling you what we did. I'm telling you what worked for us. I'm sharing with you guys many friends and many other people that we know that have fed this way, have been feeding this way longer than us, have just started and seen dramatic improvements. And I want you guys to do your own research and read this for yourself. Now, it's not a thick book. This is referencing dogs and cats because rotational monofeeding is just as good for cats as it is for dogs. But it's explaining diet to you, and it's going back to the original concept of how dogs actually fed and ate and how they did things and making you think. And I kid you not, and I tell this all the time to people that ask me about Howie and feeding and what I recommend. This was my aha moment. When I read this book, things started making sense to me to go, oh my God, you're right. So even when Howie, that first year of life, when I was still talking to you guys about supplements, I think looking back, that was overwhelming to me. That was overwhelming to think that I had to buy all these different kinds of foods. I had to portion them out and measure everything up. I had to add all these different supplements in, one for joints, one for heart health, one for, skin, one for allergies, all these different things. That was money. I haven't spent any of that money. So when people say it's overwhelming, I don't know what to do, it's too much, it's really not if you kind of think about it and take all that extra stuff out of the equation. So all I really ask everybody is that you guys just get the book and read the book. We're going to bring Nora on, and Nora's going to talk to you guys a little bit about it. I just want to give you guys a little bit of insight as to why I do what I do with Howie and what motivated us to feed this way, because I want you guys to be, if I can put it in an easy way, I want you guys to be proactive instead of reactive. If I can say anything, think about being proactive versus reactive. So what I mean by that is, if you can be proactive and do good things for your dog's health now before they get sick versus waiting till you have to react and something happens and you take them to the vet and now you're forced to do an antibiotic, or you're forced to do a medication, or you're forced to do a treatment, or they tell you that your dog is on its last leg because it has pancreatitis or some other kind of issue, or IBD, all these different things. This is where I'm trying to educate and share with you guys about things that you can do to get your dog on a healthy life so that we can get our pets to live with us forever. I mean, what's the bulldog's average age life expectancy? They said 6 to 8 years, I think, something like that. Tyson died at 8 years old. 6 of it he spent being miserable because he was sick all the time. His last 2 years was transitioning over, getting all that stuff out of his system, trying to get healthy, and just in the end, it just was a little too much for him. But needless to say, Howie, look, 3 years old, he's thriving, he's doing great. I haven't had no issues. He's never had an ear infection. He's never had an allergy issue. I have went through 2 summers in Michigan with no issues with allergies. I've never dealt with pancreatitis, kidney issues, stones, UTI, nothing because of RMF. And we're going to share all that, and we're going to get Nora on here. We just need to get her joined in here. So Nora, if you are here, I just need you to request to be in the video, and then I can add you in here with us. So you just have to go on and just request to be in the video. So if you can do that, I can get you added on here. And for any of you guys that have questions along the way, we have some of the moderators from the Rotational Monofeeding group. There is a page on Instagram, Rotational Monofeeding, as well as there is Facebook. You guys can go there, check it out, check out testimonials of dogs, read up on a prior post, see different things, and see for yourself. Do your own research. See if this is something that makes sense. But it makes sense. It makes sense to feed this way because look at how he's thriving. So it doesn't matter what age your dog is. And we're going to go over a lot of this once we get Nora into the video. So we're going to get Nora in here. So we wanted to bring you on because people hear me talk about RMF all the time. Rotational monofeeding is what RMF stands for. And, I've done my best to explain it, but I wanted to bring you on because you're the one that kind of created this whole, I don't want to say phenomenon, but this common sense way of feeding. That's the easiest way to put it. It's common sense feeding. We just don't think of it that way because we're not taught that way, and it's not what people recommend. So we want to bring you on to kind of like explain to us a little bit about it and kind of give us some insights to it. I will say, and I will share this with all of my followers, and I always say this, I'm not a vet, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just a bulldog mom that went through a lot of stuff that brought me to this point, to being as passionate as I am about dogs' health, regardless of the breed. And I'm doing whatever I can to share it with our friends and followers. I don't take any money for anything. I don't ask for anything. I'm not a brand ambassador for anybody. I just share with you guys our life. I share with you the good, bad, and in between, anything in between. And our biggest accomplishment that we have to date is RMF and the way we feed in this Dog Nutrition 101. So why don't you take it away, Nora, and tell us a little bit about RMF and kind of educate our followers a little bit about this way of feeding.
Sure. Well, I didn't get to hear the first part of that. Yeah, it's just something that I developed a few years ago, right after I wrote the book. I wanted to give people options. So I wanted to offer them different ways of feeding that all were within the limited scope of what dogs are naturally set up to digest. And, you know, you were saying that you're not a vet. Well, it's a good thing you aren't, because nobody comes through that system with their brain intact. When they come through that system, they're taught the business model.
Correct.
The business model is repeat business. If a vet doesn't get repeat business, he's going to go out of business. And that's what he's faithful to. He's faithful to the business model. Well, this is an obvious conflict. It's a conflict of interest. It would be like you know, you're a real estate person. It would be like a buyer hiring you to, or a seller hiring you to represent both the buyer and the seller in a transaction. You don't do that. It's not done. You can't serve two masters at the same time. So how, when you have two goals that are so conflicting, like one goal is make lots of money for your business, and the other goal is keep a dog away from the vet's office. That's my goal. That's your goal. I want to keep my dog out of the vet's office. I want my dog to be completely asymptomatic for life. And that's possible. But you can't have those two goals existing, you know, concurrently. They conflict with each other. So every time you go to the vet, it's like you're hiring one real estate agent to handle both, you know, to handle the whole transaction, both interested parties. So, you know, we can talk about the intricacies of rotational mono feeding and how much it costs and why do it and why we do things the way we do and all of that. But the bottom line is, I want people to understand that they have more power than they think they do. They have, when they see a symptom in their dog, if they're dumping kibble into a bowl, that's all they know. All they know is they continue dumping kibble in the bowl. If you're feeding whole foods and you see your dog have a symptom, there's something you can do about it. You understand why the symptom is happening. If you understand this information, you know, I just want people to make that connection between food and disease. Food and disease, they're so tightly connected. You can't have one without the other. And that's why the medical industry and the vet industry are so fond of looking away from food. They will tell you, they will talk all day long about genetics and, you know, the weaknesses of the breed. And, you know, the holistic people will talk to you about vaccinosis and all that, but they won't talk to you about proper feeding. And there's just this huge hunger on the part of the dog owning public to understand this information, to take this information. I want to talk to those people who have an interest. You know,
and
I don't want to.
I will say, I figured that out when Tyson was sick, and I asked the vet for all the records, and I made a spreadsheet of all the times that I went and what he was in for and what they prescribed. And even when he was sick, they were still pushing him to jab him with the you-know-whats, right?
Right.
Which is how when he got to be 6, he had 17 of them in his body, which almost killed him. But not one time did my bulldog specialist vet ever recommend a raw diet. Never, ever. Even when they sent me to a dermatologist and a specialist, they did the skin scrapings, the allergy serums, everything, they didn't. And you know why? Because they knew that I was a pet parent from the first time I came in, that I said, do whatever it takes. And by saying that meant I was their cash cow, and I would pay whatever it took to keep that dog alive. And my $25,000 that I spent over 6 years, like I said, I'm pretty sure funded my vet's new building that he has, or a portion of it. Not only me, but other pet parents. And it's just crazy to think that in that time I spent, by the time he was Howie's age, I spent what did I say, 5,500?
Problem. They always go to the worst case scenario. Oh, it could be cancer. If you take a dog or a cat in with like a distended, I took a cat in once with a distended belly because he was being fed kibble by a neighbor. I didn't know he was being fed kibble. He had a distended belly. And they said, oh, well, there's a 75% chance that he's got a tumor in there. They had no evidence to go on. They had no evidence at all. When the cat eventually died from being fed this garbage food, I had his body necropsied and there was no tumor. And it's going through a necropsy with a dog or a cat that just died is not an easy process. It's hard to find somebody to do it. It's expensive. And then you have to wait and wait and wait for the results.
Right.
But I did that because I wanted to prove to that doctor there was no tumor in there. There was something else going on. That was speculation, but he had absolutely no reason to guess that it was a 75% chance, except past experience. When he sees dogs every day and cats every day that are fed nothing but garbage. So there is a 70, you know, once you consider that's his perspective, that's his experience, then within that experience, he knows that there's a very good chance that there's cancer in the animal, because
and it's just crazy that it's crazy that we're seeing more and more dogs getting diagnosed with some forms of cancer. You know, I went through it. I had another dog before Tyson and Howie. I had a lab pit bull mix, and he died of bone cancer, and he was kibble fed his whole life, and he still got bone cancer. I mean, look at it. So it's just unfortunate that the way things are going in life, that there's all these things, you know, out there that we can't control, as far as things that are in the air, things that are, you know, put into products that we use and stuff. But like when it comes to diet, that's the one thing, like I say about Howie, I can control what goes in his mouth. And that's my form of power.
It's huge. It's much bigger than those other things. Like people will come to me and occasionally and say, oh, I've gotten rid of all of my household cleaners, and I make sure that I give them a walk every day. And those things are extremely remote compared to the very concentrated nature of what you put in the body. What you put in the body has to process and turn into cells. The cells are dying all the time in the body. They're dying. They have to be replaced. And the only place that the body can get raw materials is from the food that's coming in.
Right.
So you build what you create, you know?
So when we talk RMF and the way that we feed, and we've said that, you know, it's the way that you feed where you keep the foods separate. So we do our plant days and we do our meat days. Kind of like maybe give us a little rundown of like what an average plant day would be versus what an average meat day would be for some people. Now, I know that we post a lot of videos on our page. People can always go back and look on our page. They can look on your page and your group that you have. We always try and document to show people it's not as hard as it seems. You just got to kind of get into the routine of things. We offer a lot of videos on how we cut up a Cornish hen, showing people exactly the amount of fat that's taken off that otherwise your pet would be ingesting. So kind of give us a little bit of insight as to, you know, some of those foods that you feed and that are talked about in the RMF book.
Right. Well, I would say the most overwhelming part, I think, for most people is what they have to discard, realizing that what they've been taught so far, they need to just get rid of. If people can come to, you know, I've had a lot of success dealing with people who are owning dogs for the first time because they're a blank slate, right? They have none of the noise in their heads that has been taught to them by vet. So they go, okay, what do I feed? And they just do it, and it works, you know, and then years and years and years go by and they don't need a vet. But let's just, you know, take, for example, like a 50-pound dog, what a 50-pound dog would eat, say like a pit bull or a bulldog. An example meat meal might be a Cornish game hen, and that's, you know, I like recommending Cornish game hens because it's the whole animal pretty much. They do take the digestive tract out, and they take the liver, but the other organs are there. You know, of course, the head's not there, the feet aren't there, but everything else is there. The little, you know, secreting organs are there. But you don't have to feed those every time. You don't have to feed them even frequently. If you're on a budget, you can feed, you know, you can feed a bulldog like I would probably feed 3 chicken legs and maybe a little piece of lean meat of some kind, like beef heart. I recommend beef heart if you can find it, and if you can't find it, a butcher can usually get it for you because it's very lean. Beef heart is just a muscle meat. It's not really an organ. It's all muscle. So, or lean pork, or turkey necks, or chicken necks, or, you know, you just take a certain percentage of their body weight. You figure out what the quantity is that you need to feed them, and that's a meat meal. And you decide if you want to feed in the morning or the afternoon, depending on your schedule. You want to feed once or twice a day. That's totally up to you. And then, you know, you just feed them that, and that's it. and they don't, you know, we'll need to talk about treats, I guess, but you'd want to use on meat days, you'd want to use meat-based treats, and I use dehydrated livers, but a lot of people do that anyway. And then on the plant food days, that can be trickier for some people because they haven't even conceptualized feeding plants to dogs, and they don't know what plants to feed dogs, what their dogs will like, because
or they'll say my dog won't eat it, my dog doesn't like it, but their dog doesn't know it.
Right. And you know, typically when people try to feed, say, fruit to a dog, they'll be sitting and, you know, eating a banana or whatever, and they'll offer a piece of the banana to their dog, and the dog will go, I don't want that, that's not food. Well, they got a belly full of kibble, why would they eat fruit? What we learned from watching the wild model is that dogs don't go out and kill an elk and then go to the blueberry patch. They go to the blueberry patch when they haven't found any elk or when they haven't found any rabbits. But we can use that information to get dogs away from the eating of these agricultural products every day, because that's what causes the disease. That's what causes the disease. So, and you know, example plant meals, like this morning, my dog had a banana. That was her food all day. She's only 12 pounds, so a banana, you know, a good sized banana is a meal for her. And then in the evening, after I'm sure, you know, that 10, 12 hours has gone by between the plant meal and the bone, I can give her a bone and let her chew on that. But that's, you know, that's something I do. Other people will probably be more comfortable and will have more success not mixing meat and fruit in the same day. So you will have a meat day where you feed all meat, and then you will have a plant day where you feed all plants. So but on a plant day, you can, you know, people like also, especially when they first come to RMF, they like to make complicated meals for their dogs. And I really recommend that you avoid complicated meals, because it just, the stomach wants one food at a time. That's all it wants. You know, dogs don't go pick some berries and then go pull up some carrots and then go pull up, you know, a sweet potato and a watermelon and then go back to their den. They don't do that. They eat one food at a time. They'll go to the apple orchard and they'll eat their fill of apples, but they won't do that when they have a belly full of rabbits. They will only do that when their bellies are empty. And many times our dogs never have empty bellies. Their bodies are always processing kibble. So why would they perceive the need to eat secondary foods if they're always processing food? They, you know, their instincts kick in, and their instincts are what drives them to go, you know, it's been like a day or two since I saw my last rabbit, right? I'm not finding any rabbits. It's their senses, their instincts that drive them back to the apple orchard that they passed a couple days ago. They will go find that food, but that's a dog with an empty belly. And so that's the sort of situation that we have to kind of replicate in our kitchens in order to get dogs on board with, with feeding.
Yeah, and I've been trying to say the same. I've been trying to kind of say the same thing too. Obviously, keep it simple, because sometimes we make things more complicated than it has to be. We think that we have to put in 3 or 4 foods. My theory always has been, and now I've been doing this for 2 years, so I'm a little bit more comfortable doing it now than I was in the beginning, is on my plant day, literally I go counter to bowl. That's my words, counter to bowl. I always am stocked up on fruit, which in turn, if you guys think about it, when you're buying more fruit, everybody in the house is going to snack more on what's on the counter and readily available than what's in a cabinet. So I will say my husband, my kids, I have all the time fruits, whatever's in season. If my fruit bowl is empty, I feel like I'm going to get sick to my stomach because somebody's not going to get fruit, whether it's Howie or whether it's the kids. So that's the one thing I do, is I make sure my fruit bowls are filled up all the time. And so when it's plant day for Howie, I don't even think about it. Honest to God, I wake up in the morning, I go to my fruit bowls and I find the ripest fruit that I can get. And if it's a banana with brown spots, I peel that banana and I put it in his bowl. If there's a ripe pear or a ripe apple or kiwi or something, you know, whatever's there, I grab it and I feed it to him. Sometimes he's fine on just apples or sometimes just bananas, but he actually does well if I put 1 or 2 or 3, and I just usually grab whatever's in there. So plant day actually is really, really easy for us because I do more of that. I know that a lot of people are, have the misconception, and I was one of them, that that okay, so feeding too much fruit or even feeding sweet potatoes or bananas is a lot of carbs, and those carbs convert to sugars, which those sugars convert to yeast in our pets, and that's why our pets end up having more yeast, because we're feeding too many of those things. So how can we kind of help people to say, well, that's not really true? Why is that not true? That's not, that it's okay. And I'll say, I feed Howie sweet potatoes. I feed Howie bananas. I've never had an issue with him with
And you
yeast
don't
ever
have
in his
yeast,
whole life.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because people don't understand that killing yeast does not solve the problem. Yeast is a little organism that
Mm-hmm.
comes along. It's always in your body. It's always in your dog's body. It doesn't overpopulate until the food supply is there. What does yeast eat? Yeast eats excess sugars. So you want to make sure that whatever sugars you are eating, they are getting digested. And the best way to do that is to eat them alone without the complication of adding meat. So if, lots of prey model feeders out there are giving fruit in the same meal with meat, or cooked yams in the same meal with meat. These bar feeders actually do more of that than the PMR feeders. But they will then, after that, they will notice itchiness in their dogs. And they will take their dogs to the vet, and the vet will say, oh, well, you have yeast. Well, of course you have yeast, because you have a banquet for yeast. And it's because the sugar is not made available because the body is digesting meat. And when you have sugars that aren't digested, they can't get into the cells. They're floating around in the lymph and in the bloodstream, and yeast comes along to clean up the mess. It's like flies around a garbage can. The flies didn't bring garbage. You can kill the flies if you want to, but the garbage is still going to be there. So you can kill the yeast if you want to, and that's what the vets will all do. There isn't a single vet out there. If you take your dog in for a skin scrape or whatever, if they find yeast, there isn't a single vet out there that won't try to kill the yeast. They all think that you have to just kill the yeast and that'll solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. And if you give the dog something internal to kill the yeast, it gives the body so much distraction, so much work to do to get rid of this new poison, that it's going to stop sending waste out through the skin. And that's, we need to talk about that, because what causes that is when the primary channels of elimination, the bowel, the colon, the bladder, all of those are overworked and backlogged, because every day they get overloaded with this indigestible stuff. Then the body looks for other outbound avenues. And that's what the skin is. That's what the ears are. It sends stuff. It has to. It's trying to protect it. The body's always trying to protect itself. It's always trying to do its absolute best. And when there is too much waste in the body, it starts forming tumors. It stores it in fat. It sends waste through the skin. It sends waste through the eyes, especially bulldogs, through the ears, especially if you have a floppy-eared dog, because dogs in the wild will normally, shake their head if they have, they don't get ear gunk anyway in the wild. That's exclusive to domestic dogs. But the problem with these floppy-eared dogs is there's no circulation in there at all, and it just builds up. But it's not the external stuff that's causing the problem. It's what is coming through. So we have to stop producing all the waste in the body, and we have the power to do that 100%. So you can feed conveniently if you want to, but you'll always have this conversation in your head. Wait a minute, I don't have to just go to the vet for a skin scraping and find out what microorganism is on my dog that they want to kill. That's not the solution. And that's why, it's obvious that it's not the solution, because that's why you always end up going back in 6 months. And I did that. I did that for 20 or 30 years of dog ownership, every 3 to 6 months back to the vet with, and trying different drugs and watching the reactions that my dog had to certain drugs. I put my dog on prednisone once, and she did just really crazy behaviors that led me to think that she was absolutely miserable. And like you said, what you said about Howie not being able to tell you how he feels, when we put dogs on drugs, when you take a drug for a symptom and it makes you feel worse than the original symptom does, and that happens all the time. It used to happen to me a long time ago when I took drugs. You go, wait a minute, I'd rather have the symptom back. This is absolutely
Mm-hmm.
awful. We have drugs that we are giving to dogs right now that are known to cause suicide in humans. Can you imagine how bad they make your dog feel?
Yeah.
But your dog has to keep taking that pill every day because you hide it in its pill pocket.
And
And he
also, too,
doesn't.
even with like Atopica, it says right on the pill bottle, don't touch this with your hands, but yet it's okay to give it to your dog to ingest. That's that always, like, I can't believe how they allow that. And it's okay for dogs, but you can't touch it as a human. Crazy ridiculous. Crazy ridiculous.
It's harmful for your skin, but it's not harmful for those very sensitive tissues. Right.
And now look at all these dogs, like we talked about, having all these issues and things coming up more, and tumors and cancers and seizures and tremors are like so abundant right now. And all these dogs, and parents don't know why, and they keep trying to figure out what's going on. And you know, it's like kind of, we all have to take a step back and say, well, what are we putting in our dogs' bodies from all these different medications for these little issues that they have, you know, from the fleas, the ticks, the heartworms, the atopicas, the apicols, the steroids, just all this stuff is a burden on their body. And then when their bodies react, pet parents don't know what to do. So, you know, if they just think about how this feeding helps their dog, they're going to come to a realization that, you know what, I wish I would have did this a lot sooner, which is exactly what I said. But I can't change the past. I can only change my future. And this is why, you know, we keep talking about this and saying it. So I know another question that a lot of pet parents ask, and we get a lot of argument with this on our page, especially when people see us feeding it, is that they've always been taught that you cannot feed avocados, you cannot feed tomatoes, and you cannot feed grapes. But yet Howie eats it all, and Howie's still here and alive. And how is that possible?
Well, you know, on the list of foods that are verboten for dogs, there are some foods that are legitimately bad for dogs. Chocolate, onion, garlic is bad for dogs. There's a few others that are legitimate. Avocados are hard to digest, so I don't recommend feeding them with other plants because they can kind of sit there. They're very fatty plant food, so I recommend feeding them alone. But they're perfectly safe. I've fed them to my own dog. I know lots of people that feed them.
Common sense is you don't feed the skin and you don't feed the seed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I would not want my dog to have an avocado pit because those things are very slimy. You can hardly, you know, hang on to them. It's easy to imagine that thing going down into the stomach. And dogs can swallow bones and they will be dissolved in the stomach, in the digestive juices. If they swallow an avocado pit, it's either going to get stuck or it's going to have to come out the other end because they cannot break down that very dense cellulose. But the grape issue is entirely mythological and made up. And the way that we can know that for sure is they still add grape products to pet foods in Europe. I mean, it's a common additive in pet foods in Europe where they don't have this grape paranoia. But we also have the result of a study that was done quite a while ago where they used dogs to simulate humans. You know, they do that all the time in animal research. They use other animals to simulate humans. Well, the study was trying to show whether, and there's been, you know, rumors floating around that if you stop eating everything that you eat normally and eat only grapes for a month, your diseases will go away. Well, lots of people are actually doing that. It's called the grape cure, and it's just removal of cause because you're getting rid of all the stuff that's causing your problems and eating only foods that your body is designed to eat. So, but they actually tried this in dogs. So they fed them lots of grapes, and then they had a control group, and they fed them, you know, commercial pet food or whatever dogs would normally eat. And the dogs that ate nothing but grapes were actually healthier at the end of the study than the control group. And I was just reading the other day in a book that I have by a vet, a very courageous, rare vet who thinks outside, or used to think outside the box. He practiced in the 50s. He's dead now. But he fasted dogs, and he did mono fruit meals with dogs. And grapes are one of the foods that he fed. And he would feed nothing but grapes for 30 days to dogs to cure their sicknesses. And he always had excellent results. I mean, so many thousands of people still either obliviously feed grapes to their dogs because they don't know about this. I mean, that's changing because everybody knows about it, right? But who defy the nonsense and feed grapes to their dogs. Well, you know, the way something like this gets started is a dog that's eating kibble every day might have kidneys that are on the verge of collapse. And it just happens to coincide that, you know, an owner feeds a grape or feeds a raisin, and grapes and raisins are two different foods. I don't feed raisins. I don't think raisins should necessarily be fed, but I don't feed any dried fruit at all. But, you know, the owner just happens to feed a grape or two, and the dog starts having issues, and they take the dog and to the vet, and the vet says, did you feed, and has the dog gotten into anything? And they go, oh yes, because everybody knows about the grape thing now. Oh yes, my dog had a grape. Or, you know, or they'll call the poison line or whatever, and the poison line will say, take him to the vet. And they don't even wait for symptoms. They just pump the stomach or induce vomiting. So, you know, there have been actually very few cases, and even the few cases where a dog has been presumably harmed by eating grapes, they haven't been investigated. They haven't been, we don't know what else the dog ate. All we know is that the vet heard the word grape and assigned the blame to grapes. But in the meantime, we've got mountains and mountains of evidence that grapes aren't poisonous.
You know? Yeah. So that's good, because I know a lot of people's concern is about that with the grapes. Same thing goes for tomatoes as well too.
There's lots of other fruits that you can feed. You don't have to feed them. Absolutely.
Yeah. I you know, like I said, Howie, I have, in the beginning when we started, there were some fruits that he was not keen on. So I would just learn what he liked and feed him what he liked. And then as months and things went on, I would reintroduce that fruit that he didn't like before, like papaya, for example. You know, I fed it to him again later on, and now he eats it, and he eats everything. He eats all kinds of, you know, fruits and vegetables, and he eats more fruits and vegetables than my kids do, which is good. So, and I will say too, with Howie, he is doing 1 meat day and 1 plant day. That's the schedule that I have him on. He's 52 pounds. He gets about 10 ounces in the morning and 10 ounces in the evening on meat day. And he does great. I can feed him a variety of different meats. We've talked about it before. The leaner, the better. I do bones. I do organs. I kind of like, because he does well with everything. He's been pretty much raw fed since he was a puppy. And then on our plant day, we just, you know, he gets his percentage of plant on that day, and he's great with everything. Some people will ask though, okay, because he's 3. So some people will say, you know, is this something, can I start I'm getting a new puppy, or I just got a new puppy. Can I start RMF, you know, on my puppy? Or some people will say, well, my dog is 5. Is he too far gone? You know, or has he been eating kibble too long to where I can't switch him now? In which case I say, it's never too late to start. I mean, we've had dogs that have been older and they become puppies again because they're starting to eat clean. And then what better way to start your puppy off on a good start by feeding them a appropriate diet, a common sense diet, a healthy diet. So like Howie, they don't have any issues going into life because they're eating clean, basically. Yeah. So there's no such thing as the wrong time, right? To start.
No, there's no such thing as a wrong time, and it's never too late. I'll just tell you that my parents' dog was 14 when they finally started feeding him properly, and he just turned 19, and he's a big dog. He's like a 50-pound Aussie. So he might make it to 20. And, you know, it's like if you're carrying a burden your whole life and you're carrying that burden and you think you have no choice but to carry that burden, you get to be 70 years old and somebody comes along and says, oh, I can carry that for you. Wouldn't you do that? Because that's what commercial food is to the body. It's a burden, and it's never too late to remove the burden. Now, it's up to the dog's vitality and the dog, you know, remaining vitality, whether everything becomes rejuvenated. But what the disease that's happening is going to stop. It won't progress. So even though it might not be fully reversible in a very old dog, and it's very rare, it's actually very rare when a chronic disease is not fully reversible. It's very rare. But if a dog is very old and the disease is not reversible, at least it won't progress. So, I mean, that's the power. So no, it's never too late.
Okay, good. What about people that also think that they need to add supplements to their dog's foods for extras to make it more balanced? Or, you know, we were talking about being balanced and there's no such thing before. But, you know, I mean, I did it to Howie's for his first year of life. I added in like a multivitamin, and I added in you know, glucosamine and you know, all these different things. And then I got to realize that, you know, they really don't need that because number one, they're all synthetic and half of them, they're not even real. And then you're just putting more weight into, in my eyes, you're putting more waste into your dog's body, which is just something else they have to try and funnel out. And,
Yes.
you know, like I said, I haven't used any supplements or anything in 2 years. And I, you know, why don't the dogs need supplements?
Well, that's a commercial that plays in people's heads. And the only reason why we've been told by this industry that we need to supplement, we need to take nutritional supplements, or we need to give nutritional supplements to our dog is because somebody's selling a product. It opens the door to selling a product. That's all it is. There's absolutely no basis in reality. They're even doing studies now. And there's a doctor named Colin Campbell, and he does studies all the time on these supplemental nutrients, and he looks for studies and he sort of catalogs them. He wrote a great book called Whole, where he talks about whole foods versus, you know, processed foods. But he quotes these studies in his book that have been shown that the people who take supplements compared to a control group that does not, actually, they have their diseases get worse. They're less healthy after the research is done than the people who don't take the supplements. And it's supposed to be just the opposite according to this industry, right? This supplement industry. Supplements are outrageously expensive. They are, once you take a nutrient out of its whole food context and make a powder of it and stick it into a little pill with a bunch of other little particles, it has to be in the normal context of the food. That's how nutrients, they interact with each other. They need each other in order for the body to recognize them and make use of them. So they're destroyed and they're fractionated, which means they're taken out. And that's what the commercial pet food industry does. They don't care where the nutrients come from. They don't care if the nutrients come from an inappropriate food to begin with. They don't care if the nutrients are killed or otherwise destroyed in the processing, as long as the nutrient is in the food. And that's why they can take this little brown ball, this little brown kibble, and say, that's complete. It's not complete. It has this crap that's not even digestible. What difference does it make if it's complete? You know, why not make up some criteria by which to judge your product and then judge your product perfect?
Yeah. And the same goes for oils. The same goes for oils too. So like feeding your dog like oils like salmon oil, or like I used to use ultra oil with Howie. I don't do any of that anymore because I'm feeding a variety of foods that have those omega-3s in them. So whether it's a protein such as salmon, or I'm feeding a fruit or a plant that's got that. I mean, now I think our minds have to kind of change a little bit to say, let's look at the content of what's in that supplement versus let's look at what's in the content of that fruit that you're feeding. And this one has clean vitamins and this one has synthetic vitamins, and which one is better to feed our dogs. And this was a reason why, you know, I get Howie blood test every year, because his first year of life, he was on pre-made raw and he was on supplements, and I went and I had his blood test done. So when we were entered into RMF and he was on RMF for a year, so at age 2, I took him in and I had his blood test again because I wanted to monitor and see, did those supplements really make a difference? Not only for me, but for you guys to hear and see. I just did it again at age 3. And I kid you not, his vet and all the vet techs at his vet, and I only go to his vet once a year for a wellness check and a blood test and his titer test. They all said to me how good he looks, and that how come every other dog that comes into the vet's office has a skin issue and Howie has not one issue. And I said, the book. I gave my vet the book. It's all in the book. If you want to know, exactly. I said, read the book, because I gave it to my vet. And I did those blood tests just for my peace of mind, but also to show you guys that whole first year that I had him on those supplements, I was throwing money out the window. It was a waste because it did nothing to support him, nothing to make him any healthier. So for this past 2 years, all I've been feeding is RMF. No supplements, no oils, no dairy, no nothing. No, you guys see exactly what we feed. And so I just go to the vet. I run a simple blood panel for everything that's on there, and vets know what you're talking about. Just tell them that you want to run their blood test. This year, I actually did a full panel for thyroid, for my own peace of mind again. Everything was perfect. I had no issues with anything. So 2 years, no supplements, 2 years, no oils, 2 years, no dairy, and look at the difference it's made in his health. So I can specifically say that, yeah, those supplements were a waste of money. And if my dog was not eating what they call a balanced diet, or how people say, well, this isn't a real way of feeding, would my dog be as healthy as he is? And I think this is where the misconception comes into play, because you never hear vets talk about RMF. You hear all these great people out there, and we know a lot of them, and I still follow a lot of them and read up on a lot of them, but you never hear them talk about this way of feeding, because like Nora said, there's always financial gain involved with it. They wouldn't be successful if they didn't have something to push. If they were just giving you information, they would not make any money to become successful. So as far as it goes with RMF pushes nothing. Our rotational monofeeding pushes nothing. The only investment people ever have to make is the $19.95 to read the book and educate yourself. There's no supplements, no add-ons, no nothing that anybody's. So how would they feel like what we say is better than somebody else? Well, we're not here to make money. So if you think about all these other people that are out there telling you their way to feed, they're recommending their foods, but then they're also recommending something else that you have to add to that food that's still going to be beneficial for your pet. And at the end of the day, is it really beneficial for your pet? Is it really? And it's not. It's just causing more burden to their bodies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my integrity is important to me, and there's no conflict here. I'm not going to sell a product. You go to my website and there's no advertising there. How often, how many websites do you visit nowadays that have absolutely zero products? Absolutely zero products. The only thing that you can buy on my website is that book and a subscription membership to our group, which gives you full access to the website and to the private Facebook group, and that I go in and contribute in all the time, and so do my moderators. But the only product that I have is information and success. I mean, when you see the testimonials in the group and on the website, that's the product. The product is success. I want your dog to have what my last dog did. He lived to be 19. And he didn't go to the vet for the last 11 years of his life. So as he was aging, dogs are, supposed to be getting more decrepit and more ill, more sick. He didn't ever have a symptom. I mean, I figured out what caused, he was a Cocker Spaniel too. He was a cockapoo, and he had long floppy ears, and I figured out what was causing his ear inflammation. I removed that from his diet, and he never had in 11 years another ear infection. So, I mean, there's just so much personal empowerment in it. And I just want people to make that connection. So they realize the power that they have. You don't, like you did, you took months to decide whether you wanted to do this. And that, I want people to just start thinking about the connection, and, eventually it'll make sense. For some people, it's going to make sense right away, and for others, they're going to need that germination period,
Right. That's why I say do your research. I don't say that, hey, this is the best way to go or the only thing to do. I just say do your research. As with anything in life, do your research, read the book, look at the testimonials, see other dogs that have gone through things, go into the Facebook group and say if your dog is having pancreatitis or UTIs or stones, go in there and in the search bar, put that in there and see the conversations that come up about people that are going through it and how their dogs have been helped by this way of feeding, and see the testimonials on everything in there, from dogs with cancer to pyometra to kidney stones to IBD, dogs that were on their deathbed that have come back from this. Now, unfortunately, death is a natural part of life, and sometimes the disease in these dogs is bigger than we can do anything about. And we're by no means saying don't ever go to a vet or don't ever trust your vet, or that our diet is the only way. What we're saying is think about common sense feeding. Think about what you're putting in your dog. Think about what's happening when you go to the vet and you're asking questions. Because my question always was, well, how come this keeps happening? If this was your dog, what would you do? And like I said, my vet had bulldogs too. And he would say, well, it's just the bulldog thing. And I've come to realize, which I'm hoping to educate other bulldog parents, that it's not a bulldog thing. look at how he's 3 and he's never had a paw on his cyst. He's
Right.
never had an ear infection. So it's not a bulldog thing. You can have a bulldog such as this type of breed and have a healthy dog. Again, the good things you put in, the results that you're going to get out. Everything kind of goes hand in hand. And it's funny to say it because, you know, we think like ourselves, we think for our pets. So I'm putting healthier things in Howie. I'm in turn putting healthier things in myself because I'm buying it for the family as a whole. I'm walking him to avoid obesity. I'm walking myself to avoid obesity. So I'm not only in you know, in essence, making him healthy, I'm making myself healthy too, because it really does make you think about what's in the products that we eat and we put into our body too. You know, I can control what goes in my mouth. I can't control what goes in his unless I'm feeding him directly. And by doing that, making the foods and you know, showing people what we feed and showing people how he's thriving as a dog and, you know, things that he goes through. So, you know, there's going to be things in the world I think that we can never control. There's environmental things. There's things in the air quality, you know, based on areas that you live in the world and, you know, countries and things that, you know, fleas, things we can't get away from. We just have to kind of make the best decisions about what we put in our pets in order to give them the best quality of life and best health that we can. And I think we can probably sit here all night long and go on and on and on about RMF and the benefits of RMF. But I would hope that for a dog as Howie, you know, starting as a puppy, being raw fed and where he's at 3 years old, and many other people out there that their dogs have been thriving on RMF, that people will give RMF an opportunity and do their own research, read the book, check the website out, Rotational Mono Feeding, check out the Instagram, check out the Facebook pages and communities that they have and the groups that they have. And again, do your own research, read up on things and just see what's out there. And if your dog is experiencing things, think about like what I did. There's got to be a better way. There always is a better way. We just have to be open-minded to it. So I know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm not saying never take your dog to the vet either. I'm saying
there's
the
a time and place for
veterinary
everything.
industry, a vet's business is about 5% about trauma and injury, and it's about 95% chronic sickness. So chronic sickness is their cash cow. You know, that's the money maker for them. And if your dog is injured, somebody's going to have to stitch them back together. Somebody's going to have to set the bone or whatever, or put everything back together. It helps even in those situations to be educated about what's necessary and what's not.
Right.
Because you can mess up healing with the with follow-up, you know, treatments that vets are so smitten with. So
and I've changed a lot of my way of thinking too about going to the vets. Whereas before I would say, yeah, do whatever needs to be done. You know what? Take care of it. I don't care what it costs. Now it's like, I want to know what's in that. I want to know what the side effects are. What is this going to do to my dog, no matter what it is? And does he really need it? And now when I walk into that vet's office, my vet knows, and I have that confidence to say, no, he doesn't need that. No, he doesn't need, you know, this vaccine or that vaccine, because I've tested for it and he still has the antibodies 3 years later. So why continue every year to keep vaccinating, which again, putting more burden on the body. You know, you become empowered as a pet parent, not only in controlling their diet, nutrition, but their health at the vets as well. So there's a lot to say for the whole RMF community, not just with diet alone, but in how you look at things overall. So
yes, absolutely. And you know, a lot of people are intimidated by the white coat, you know, the white coat syndrome. They, you know, they think, well, this person is educated, they know best, they understand what's going on.
But how much nutrition do vets really have in vet school? You can talk to any of them. They say 2 weeks at most, and it's a general skim over. It's nothing about diet, nutrition as a whole, because they do want vets to learn the business side of everything, and they do want them to continue to keep the residual business, you coming back with chronic dog issues. Very, very, very few vets are there out there that will realistically say, no, your dog doesn't need this, or hey, how about this type of diet, or hey, have you ever considered raw feeding? You know, because they know.
And what they do learn is this stuff that comes from the commercial pet food industry, this pseudoscience that they've made up about nutrients being in there and complete and balanced, and they compare food A to food B without thinking outside, you know, looking. Why not feed real food? Why do we have to go buy packaged food in a store? Why can't we, you know, we are supposed to shop around the perimeter of the store, right? The meat, the vegetables, the fruit, all of that for humans. But they say for dogs, no, for dogs, go right to the dog food aisle. Why?
Yeah.
Why? What's different about dogs? Why wouldn't they need real food just like we do?
Yeah.
You know, what, you wouldn't sit down and pour a bowl of cereal for your kid 3 times a day. And that's what, and doctors wouldn't, you know, as ignorant as doctors are about nutrition, even they wouldn't recommend that. But a vet will. A vet will look you right in the face and tell you that's the best thing for your dog. There are very learned, very educated, board certified veterinary canine nutritionists who will look you straight in the eye and say, yeah, Purina, what's the dog chow? Purina dog chow is better than going and buying meat and vegetables and fruits for your dog. They will say that. This is absolutely crazy thinking. But these people who specialize in nutrition, they aren't treated to like just 2 weeks of this stuff. They go on and do a year or 2 of getting that stuff pumped into their brain. Oh, as long as all these various nutrients are there in the food, doesn't matter if they're destroyed, doesn't matter if it's digestible, has nothing to do with symptoms. You know, they're just more brainwashed than the person that only got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they're not in a better position to tell you what's good for your dog. They're in a worse position.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we want these pet parents to think about things that if their dogs are experiencing any issues, such as the chronic ear infections that keep happening, tail pocket issues. You know, I hear a lot with UTIs all the time. You know, they have patches of hair that are just coming out and they can't figure out what all this is. They have an overabundance of yeast. And that's what it is. We want them to start thinking about what they're putting in their dog's mouth. And I get inquiries every single day, and people ask me all the time, my dog has this issue. What's the problem? Well, number one, I'm not a vet, so I can't tell you, you know, I'm not a doctor. I can only ask questions to kind of figure out what's building up to why that issue is happening. And it's always, what are you feeding? Have you given any recent medications? Have you given any recent, you know, vaccines, and any recent flea and tick? Probably 7 out of 10 of them are usually all, yes, I have given them this, this, and this. Well, then there's your issue because you're overburdening the body. Or no, I haven't, but then again, my food's been this. Well, think about what the food is that you're feeding. And yes, they may have been great on it for 2 years, but now you're coming into 3rd year that body's been overburdened for all these years. And now it's kind of coming to a head where now you're going to start having issues and trying to go back and fix everything from those years before. It is possible, no matter if they're puppies, no matter if they're 5 years old, no matter if they're experiencing an issue or not.
And that's why allergies take sometimes, you know, you don't see allergies in small puppies. You don't really see allergies in adolescent dogs. You see allergies in dogs that are 1 or 2 years old. That's when it begins. And it's because the stuff has to build up for a while until the symptoms, and still until the body goes, I can't do that. I can't deal with all this waste anymore. It starts sending it out through the skin.
And that was exactly Tyson. Exactly.
Yeah. And we just did a short video on our YouTube channel called Rotational Mono Feeding. So everybody go subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's like an 11-minute video that explains the cause of ear problems, ear inflammation, ear infections. You will never hear any information like that from a vet. Even a holistic vet will not tell you what the cause is. They will only try to tell you, clean the ears and put this stuff in it. Well, the pharmaceutical vet will give you a pharmaceutical product to get it to put in the ears. The holistic vet will give you the herbal product to put in the ears. They won't tell you how to stop it. They won't tell you how to never come back to their offices. Even the holistic vets, they want to, but they are not taught that information. The only one in the whole world that I'm aware of that knows the cause of disease and, you know, recommends RMF to everybody who will listen is one that just retired. He's my vet. He's right down the street, and he's fantastic. He was the co-founder of the American Holistic Veterinary Society like 50 years ago. He was the co-founder of that. So, and past president. So he's just fantastic, very rare gem, and he's retired now. He's like 85 years old, so he's been in business been practicing for 50 years, but he's the only one in the whole world that I know of. And they all might have that desire, but they don't know because they aren't taught this information. They aren't, there's no place to get it. Right. You know, it was a fluke that you found it. It's a fluke that anybody finds it. Yeah,
it was a fluke that Laura Honey's mom and Sarah Samson and Delilah's mom found it, and we were in a bulldog group because we came together because of Tyson. That's how I gained a lot of friends and followers on Instagram, was through my dog's sickness, and we all became a tight-knit group. And now there's like a ton of us that are feeding RMF, and in the process we've become great friends because we share that bond of wanting to be better and do better for our pets, and
it's a needle in a haystack, it's a needle in a haystack. There's so much noise out there.
Well, I'll say, Nora, we can have this conversation going on for hours and hours, but I don't want to get it too long for people. But we wanted to kind of touch on the whole diet thing to begin with, and touch on a little bit about RMF so we can get those people interested to at least read the book, do their own research. Again, we're going to be giving 3 of these books away for free if you go over to the RMF Rotational Mono Feeding community group and you like, comment, and share on their page. And we're going to be giving 3 of these away. I think it's Friday was the day. Friday was the giveaway day, if I'm not mistaken.
Saturday? I'm not sure.
Yeah, Friday or Saturday. It's posted on there. But we're going to be giving those away to 3 people that are interested. But like I said, $20, $19.95, the ebook is that you can get. You just get it online. Nora will email it to you. You can actually, if you don't have the capacity to print it out at home, you can send it to your local printer. You can punch holes in it and put it in a binder, and you have this. I mean, mine is like, I have 3 of them actually, because I
Really?
read and I reread mine again, because every time I read it, I take something new from it. And I learn. So if I see any kind of little issue that kind of pops up with Howie, this is like my Bible. I go to my book and I kind of reread again and say, okay, what am I doing that might not be right? Or what can I change or eliminate or take out for a little bit, or see what so it's kind of like you're kind of self-diagnosing what the issue is, because you're putting in what could be causing the issue. So it's like, okay, let's take a step back on things. But this book is like the holy grail of everything, and for people to do their own research. What we'd like to do is if we get enough response from people and see what people want to hear and talk about, there's more in depth to this that we can get, such as, what happens when your dog does start feeding RMF, and things that you might notice on them, and how we can take these dogs that have issues with like cancers and tumors and different things that may be going on, and how just this way of feeding can help them as well too. And not only for dogs, but for cats as well. So a lot of people, the misconceptions out there that this way of feeding is only for dogs. It's not. It's for cats too. So even though this book might look like it's a little thick, there's a section of it that's on cats. So if I don't have cats, but if you have cats, this is great information there for you too. And if you don't, you just skip that section in the book. So we want
the only difference with cats is they don't eat plant foods. Cats are very strict carnivores, so they have meat day every day, but they eat also very lean animals. They're even less tolerant of fat in their food than dogs are. So it's very important that they get very lean animals, very lean meat. But cats are easy. They're hard to
and that could be another topic too, is that we have a conversation, a Q&A all about people that might have cats and have questions and things. So it might be great. And I know that there's some questions that we didn't even get to in here today, but I don't want to make this too long and too boring for everyone. So what we'll do is maybe save some of those questions for another time. And if, like I said, we get enough interest, we could continue this on into a series. And that way people are informed, and people can always go back and watch it on a replay, or, share it with their friends to know all about RMF, not only from me as someone who's experienced it and gone through it for a couple years now, and especially from a puppy age, but from you as the writer, as the author, as the developer of this, and why this way of feeding is so good for our pets and something that they should really research and consider. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us tonight. And again, will tell everyone, go check out the Rotational Mono Feeding on Instagram, on Facebook. There's a Facebook group, there's a Facebook community, there's the website. It's all Rotational Mono Feeding. It's the YouTube page. This is how we feed Howie. Howie eats 1 plant, 1 meat day every day. That's how his schedule is: 1 meat, 1 plant. He gets 2 meals a day. He's 52 pounds. It's worked great. He's doing impeccably. His bowels are great. I have no issues with anything with him. And I'm always out there to help anybody that has any questions, doesn't know where to start, wants to check out our videos on our page, as well as videos that might be on the Rotational Mono Feeding page and their YouTube channel. But we're always here as a community to help anybody that's interested in learning about it more. So I appreciate you taking the time to join, Nora, and answering all these questions for us. And hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do another a video like this again and educate people more on different topics that involve the RMF too. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'd love to. I know there's lots of questions that we didn't get to. And just know, everybody, just know that the answers are there. Nature has all the answers. Nature has everything figured out for us. So, and there's hardly, you know, I've been doing this for a very long time. There's hardly a question that I haven't heard.
Yeah, and if
So,
anybody has questions that we didn't answer here tonight in this live, hopefully our moderators were able to answer those questions as they came in. By all means, just reach out to me, let me know, and I'll be able to help you guys as much as I can. So we appreciate it. So thank you guys all for joining in tonight. You guys have a great evening, and thank you as well too, Nora.